It's time for John Coggeshall, and pardon me for all seeking pardons. Parole clemency inmates deserving, who could be serving too much time for what they did. It's time for John Coggeshall, and pardon me for all seeking mercy, a chance to be free. Will be learning.
Hi everybody, it's John Coggeshall. Everybody calls me Cog. And this is my Cogcast. And today we're going to learn a little bit about a deserving pardon petitioner named Mr. Shortal. That would be Jeffrey Shortal. And I'd like to read to you his letter to the governor. And he says, "Dear Governor, I am in my mid-50s and I've been incarcerated for over 2 decades on 4 nonviolent conspiracy convictions. In 1999, I was convicted of conspiracy to rob a bank, conspiracy to break and enter, conspiracy to abduct a bank teller, and conspiracy to possess a firearm. Yup, me and some dudes talked about doing a bank robbery, but obviously I wasn't charged with robbing a bank. I wasn't charged with breaking and entering. I wasn't charged with abducting a bank teller. And I wasn't charged with possessing a firearm. That's because I didn't rob a bank. I didn't break and enter. I didn't abduct a bank teller. And I didn't possess a firearm. I didn't do any of that. I just thought about doing it and talked about doing it. And a bunch of yo-yos who I thought were my friends, we kind of sat around and planned it, but no bank robbery ever occurred. I didn't murder anyone. I didn't commit any sexually related crimes. My charges actually amounted to 3 Class D felonies and 1 Class E felony. But I was sentenced to serve a total of 26 years, with each charge of those conspiracy charges to run one after another. I believe I was grossly over-sentenced by any measure. Guidelines seem to call for maybe probation or a year in jail, not the inflated time I received. In addition, the jury was not advised or instructed I would not be eligible for parole, a clear violation of the new Fishback Law. What's the new Fishback Law? Well, back in the late 90s, mid-90s, 1995, parole was abolished in Virginia. Unfortunately, my jury wasn't told that parole had been abolished, and a defendant several years later named Fishback convinced the Virginia Supreme Court that that wasn't constitutional. So, although the jury was never told parole was abolished, they still sentenced me, and they sentenced me to a good long time. Anyway, all I'm asking today is a simple parole hearing, which the new Fishback Law entitles me to. Whether I get parole or not is clearly up to the parole board, but that's what I'm asking. And I'm also asking clemency. Clemency from you, Governor. Virginia law today, since early 2020, now requires that I be granted a parole hearing, a simple parole hearing. That's not asking for the moon and stars above. There are lots of other problems with my trials, sentencing, and appeals, too. A habeas corpus petition was prepared by the Pro Bono Criminal Assistance Project out of the University of Virginia, but it was denied because of attorney error. And that attorney admits it. By 2005, I had been incarcerated for 6 years and frankly unable to accept the fact that all my options had been exhausted, knowing I had another 20 years to serve because of a miscarriage of justice, and unfortunately, it just broke my spirit and addled my brain. I think I had a genuine mental collapse. I was put on a medical transport, and then I attempted to flee custody. I just wanted someone to hear my foolish cry for assistance. The extent of my escape was all about 15 minutes. Those 15 minutes, one of my greatest regrets. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, and I was returned to custody without incident after a short pursuit. Those 15 minutes added another 58 and a half more years to my sentence. I realized that this was a foolish and regrettable means of attempting to bring attention to my situation. I was convicted and sentenced to 10 additional felonies relating to this escaped attempt and received sentences ranging from 6 months to 10 years. My sentence, once again, they were scheduled to all run consecutively, with each one following the next one. The result? My active prison sentence is now 84 and a half years long. I am pleading with you, Governor, to just look at my clemency petition and give it honest consideration. I think you will agree that I'll probably die in prison unless you grant me clemency. I've served almost half my life in prison, and I'm asking for your mercy, and I will show you I can be a productive member of society. I regret the horrible choices I've made in my life and the huge burden I've put on my family, but through all of this, I still have the unconditional love and support of my family. I have a home to go to with my father and stepmother who live in Fredericksburg. I'm still young enough to be able to help them and also find work to be able to support myself. My mother, bless her heart, is in her 70s and lives on Long Island in New York, and she's in failing health. I would like the opportunity to spend some quality time with her. My sister has had the burden of helping with our mother's care, and I would like to be able to take some of that responsibility off her shoulders. I have lost multiple family members, grandparents, aunts, and uncles during this incarceration, and I would really like to be released before I lose any more. Governor, I know you're a family man and you understand the importance of family. My daughter was 12 years old when I was first incarcerated. I watched her grow up behind bars. She is now a mother of 3 handsome boys and 1 feisty little girl. I want the chance to be a father and a grandfather. I also want to be the son my father in his 70s can now be proud of and be able to help my parents in their golden years. Now, more than ever, they need me, and I need them. I understand we are in scary, trying times with this coronavirus, and there's currently no end in sight for this healthcare crisis in prisons. We're going to be the last inoculated, Governor. I hear the effect it's having on everywhere, both in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the United States, and also with our global allies and adversaries. Sir, I'm asking for a conditional or partial pardon that combines my 14 individual sentences from being served one after another to having them served concurrently at the same time. This would give me another chance at life beyond these prison walls. Other than my one regrettable attempt to escape, I've been a truly model inmate, tutoring and encouraging other inmates to successfully obtain their GEDs. I have aspirations to be a good father, a great grandfather, and a solid brother to my 3 siblings, as well as demonstrating 100% support from my parents and step-parents. I want to use my life's experiences to work towards reforming what many consider a broken prison system and being a productive member of society. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, Governor. May God continue to bless, protect, and guide you in your leadership, in your service to the Commonwealth. Respectfully, Jeffrey Shortal. Let me tell you about the case of Jeffrey Shortal. Crimes that were never committed. He was given 84.5 years on 12 consecutive sentences ranging from 6 months to 10 years. Shortal has spent over 2 decades in prison. He received 30 years for the conspiracy charges and another 58.5 for his attempt to escape. While on a road trip in 1999, Shortal and his buddies discussed robbing a bank. Once they returned home, one of his buddies went to the police and shared that robbery scheme, becoming a police informant. Mr. Shortal's initial sentence was for conspiracy charges only, crimes he never actually committed, only talked about. He retracted his initial guilty plea and went to trial, and a lot of errors occurred. And they're listed in Shortal's pardon petition. The jury was not instructed about the abolition of parole, and possibly incorrect information was used to calculate his sentence. It's very possible he should have received probation or just 1 year in jail. Bad luck followed Mr. Shortal everywhere he turned. He hired new counsel to handle a writ of habeas corpus, and that new counsel missed the filing deadline, essentially rendering Mr. Shortal time barred and without any recourse for relief beyond a conditional or partial pardon way back in the early 2000s. Pro bono work at the University of Virginia School of Law took an interest, and an attorney working in conjunction with them wrote the following, quote, "The punishment for these failures by legal counsel falls almost entirely on the shoulders of Mr. Shortal, and Mr. Shortal has indeed paid not only for his own mistakes, but for those of his counsel." Well, upon receiving news that his last recourse was time barred, Mr. Shortal became very depressed and hopeless, and he attempted to flee custody upon being transferred to a medical center. One of the guards received minor injuries. Shortal received an eluding police endangerment charge. For this, he was sentenced to 3 years with 2.5 suspended for a total of 6 months active sentence. But in addition, Jeffrey Shortal received 4 counts of attempt with use of a gun, 45 years for that, 3 counts of use of a firearm and commission of a felony, which he got 13 years for, all for a total of 58.5 years. His lawyer, who worked for years as the Chief Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney, specializing in prosecuting homicide cases, noted that, quote, "Most murder cases receive 30 to 40 years. In Shortal's case, the injury to the guard was relatively minor and was dropped. The 58.5-year sentence Shortal received is disproportionate in light of the facts of his case and considering the 30 to 40 years most murderers generally receive." Although Mr. Shortal spent 4 years in solitary confinement after his attempted escape, it did not deter him from becoming an active and, in a positive way, a perfect prisoner. In 2012, he received a certificate of completion in commercial and institutional cleaning, and between 2007 to 2014, he earned 5 certificates: problem solving, breaking barriers, 2 in anger management, and thinking for a change. Jeffrey Shortal has been a model prisoner, living in the honors dorm, helping in ministry, earning his GED, and helping others to earn their GED certificates as well. Jeffrey Shortal has the love of family and friends and nearly 50 character reference letters of support. Jeffrey Shortal seeks the following: a parole hearing based on the new 2020 Fishback law, a parole hearing for which he seems to be eminently eligible, and a conditional or partial pardon that takes into consideration all his sentences and puts them together to be served at the same time, concurrently. Finally, I'd like to read something that was sent to the governor by a person who thinks a lot of Jeffrey Shortal. It's a character reference letter, that's what we call it, but it's done in the form of a poem. And it goes like this. A heavy soul, a throbbing heart, a missed loved one years apart. Time has passed, justice has served, a lifelong sentence that's not deserved. A troubled past none will question, but a man who found God, and that's a huge progression. A family torn, a young man missed. Where does Jeff stand on the freedom list? Model inmate, walls closing in. Please take mercy on his soul and let him live. Jeffrey has a family who loves him, will support him, take him in, guide him, and most importantly, keep him from sin. Jeff has matured a great deal and has moved on from the past, and now he needs to come home to be with his family at last. Justice has been served, a long sentence given. Time to give Jeff a life he deserves to live in. A rehabilitated man, a family who has forgiven. Please give Jeff his freedom with your permission. That's the story of Jeffrey Shortal. I'm John Coggeshall. Everybody calls me Cog. And tune in again when we'll talk about another deserving pardon petitioner. Until then, thumbs up and hang loose.